Cereals' role and importance. Cereals hold an essential place in the global diet, being the main source of food for the majority of world's population. Practically everywhere, people consume cereals in different forms. They can be milled and transformed into staple products such as bread, pasta, or semolina. They can be cooked as polenta-type dishes, or they can be boiled and incorporated into a wide variety of traditional recipes. However, the role of cereals is not limited to human nutrition only. In their raw form, either whole grains or milled, but also as green plants, dried and zilled, or as crop residues such as straws, chaff, or cobs, cereals are a vital component of the diet of all domestic animal species. Moreover, byproducts obtained during cereal processing, such as bran, have high nutritional value and are widely used in animal feed. Cereals also play a significant role in industry. They are an important raw material for various sectors, from the production of alcohol, beer, starch, and glucose, to cellulose and paper. In this way, cereals support an extended production chain that stretches from the food industry to the chemical industry and biotechnology. Another key aspect is their balanced nutritional composition for the human body. The protein to carbohydrate ratio, for example, is about 1 to 6, much more favorable than in legumes, which are 1 to 3, or in potatoes, which range from 1 to 12, up to 1 to 16. This makes cereals highly suitable for daily consumption without health risks. In addition, their low water content, between 11 and 14%, ensures high stability during storage and makes them easily to transport over long distances. At a compositional level, cereal grains consist mainly of starch, proteins, fibers, fats, B-complex vitamins, and essential minerals such as iron, potassium, and magnesium. Even the byproducts such as straw or chaff are rich in fibers and minerals, making them useful both for animal feed and as raw material in various industries. In conclusion, cereals represent an agricultural category of major importance. They secure not only the foundation of human and animal diets, but also serve as an indispensable resource for multiple industrial sectors. For these reasons, we can say that cereals are not just everyday food, but also a strategic resource without which modern society would look entirely different. Wheat. Wheat as a crop. Wheat is the most important cultivated cereal, both in terms of global acreage and in terms of its role in human nutrition. The large areas devoted to wheat and the continuous attention it receives come from the several key advantages. Wheat grains are rich in carbohydrates and proteins in a ratio that closely matches human dietary needs. They have low moisture content, which means long storage life and safe transport over long distances. Wheat also shows remarkable ecological plasticity. It can be grown on a wide variety of soils and climates, from temperate Europe to dry continental zones, and its entire cultivation process can be fully mechanized. These traits explain why wheat is not only the dominant cereal in Europe, but also one of the most traded agricultural commodities worldwide. From a taxonomic perspective, wheat belongs to the genus Triticum, family Poaceae. Within Within this genus, there are many wild forms and cultivated species, but the most widespread is Triticum aestivum, subspecies vulgare, the common bread wheat, which occupies about 90% of the global wheat area. Alongside it, durum wheat and spelt are also grown, although on much smaller areas. Chemical composition and nutritional value. The structure of the wheat grain explains much of its nutritional and industrial importance. The grain consists of three main parts: the protective hull, the endosperm, which makes up more than 80% of the kernel, and the germ, which is the embryo of the plant. Surrounding the endosperm is the aluronic layer, where important enzymes are formed during germination. Carbohydrates dominate the grain, accounting for 60 to 75% of its weight, over 90% of which is starch. Proteins usually represent 10 to 16% of the grain, with limits ranging from 8 to 24 depending on species, variety, and environmental conditions. These proteins form gluten, which gives wheat flour its unique capacity to form elastic dough that traps air during fermentation. This property is what makes bread possible. Lipids account for about 2% of the kernel, mostly stored in the germ. Wheat germ oil is particularly valued for its high content of unsaturated fatty acids and vitamin E. The outer layers contain cellulose and mineral elements such as potassium, calcium, magnesium, copper, manganese, and molybdenum. B-complex vitamins are also present. Climatic conditions influence composition significantly. In hot, dry environments, protein tends to increase, while cool, moist conditions favor starch accumulation. This variation explains why wheat from Canada with high protein content is blended with softer wheats from Western Europe to obtain optimal baking flours. Commercially, wheat is grouped into hard, semi-hard, and soft classes according to protein level and gluten strength, which determine whether the grain is suited for bread, pastry, pasta, or feed. Wheat species and varieties among the species, common wheat, Triticum aestivum, is dominant. It has a hollow stem, ears that may or may not carry short awns, and grains that are oval and mealy, ideal for bread flour. Durum wheat, Triticum durum, differs in having a solid stem, long awns, and glassy kernels. It is less suitable for bread but perfect for pasta and semolina, thanks to its strong protein structure. Spelt, an older subspecies, has been cultivated since the Bronze Age. It is frost and disease resistant, but less productive because the grain remains enclosed in hulls after threshing. Today, it survives as a niche cereal in Central Europe, where it produces very high quality flour for artisan baking. In Romania, autumn breed wheat dominates, while spring wheat is limited to small submontane zones. Modern Romanian varieties such as Abund Biharia, PG 102, PTK1, RJT Borsalino, and Glossa achieve between 8 and 12 tons per hectare in favorable years. These cultivars combine yield, potential with resistance to drought, tolerance to heat and diseases, and stable baking quality. Variety selection remains crucial for adapting the crop to local soils, climate, and target market. Species and varieties. Industrial uses of wheat. Beyond its role as food, wheat is also a raw material for multiple industries. The most traditional route is milling, which produces flour for bread and pastries, semolina for pasta, and byproducts such as bran and germ. Bran is valued in functional foods and animal nutrition, while germ is used in nutritional supplements and cosmetics. Durum wheat is the cornerstone of pasta manufacturing. Its gluten quality ensuring firm and stable products like spaghetti, macaroni, couscous, or instant noodles. Another important process is gluten extraction, which supplies the baking industry for concentrated protein to improve those strength and provides ingredients for vegetarian foods such as seitan or plant-based protein snacks. Starch obtained from wheat has both food and non-food applications. In food, it serves as a thickener and stabilizer. Beyond food, it is used in the pharmaceutical sector, in paper manufacturing, and in textiles for fabric finishing. Non-food uses are expanding rapidly. Wheat starch can be converted into bioethanol, a renewable fuel that supports climate goals. Wheat straw, once considered waste, is now processed into paper pulp, biodegradable packaging, eco-friendly construction boards, and even bioplastics for the circular economy. Wheat germ oil, rich in vitamin E, is used in dietary supplements and skincare products. Animal nutrition also benefits. Grains, bran, and straw all find use as feed or bedding, creating integrated value chains where no part of the plant is wasted. Altogether, wheat is far more than staple food. It is a flexible industrial platform providing carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and fibers for a variety of sectors. From bread on the table to biofuel in cars to packaging and cosmetics, wheat sustains both daily life and the emerging bioeconomy. Barley, systematics and main forms. Barley belongs to the genus Hordeum within the grasses. The genus includes many wild species, but only the one cultivated complex. Traditionally referred to as Hordeum vulgare, from which our modern barleys derive. Within this complex, botanists distinguish several forms according to the arrangement and fertility of spikelets along the rachis. In practical terms, you will most often hear about two-rowed barley, known as Hordeum vulgare, convar, disticum, and six-rowed barley, convar, hexacticum. In the two-rowed type, only the central spikelets are fertile. So we see two neat grains rows, one on each side of the rachis. In six-row types, all three spikelets at each node are fertile, giving that characteristic star-like cross-section and a denser multi-rowed ear. There are also intermediate forms where side spikelets are partially sterile, which explains the visual spectrum between the classic 2- and 6-rowed types. Barley spikes also vary by density. Dense spikes have very short rachis, segments and show 6 evenly spaced rows. Lax spikes have longer segments, so lateral spikelets overlap and the ear looks more rectangular. These distinctions matter because grain uniformity, size, and husk features influence mold quality, food processing, and combined settings at harvest. In cultivation, you will encounter 2-rowed barleys selected for malting quality and both 2- and 6-row types for feed and food uses. In Romania, commonly grown groups include 2-rowed variants Newtons with a laxer ear and variant erectum with a denser ear, and 6-rowed variants pallidum and variant parallelum. Most have yellowish hulled grains and rough awns, details that help with field identification and post-harvest handling. Chemical composition and quality targets. Barley grain is a compact package of starch, protein, fiber, lipids, and minerals. On average, carbohydrates make up to 55–65% of the kernel, with starch as the main fraction. Protein typically ranges 9.5 to 14%. Lipids are about 2–3%. Cellulose is 4 to 7%. And ash around 2 to 3%. Environment and nutrition shift these numbers. Cooler, wetter seasons extend grain fill and tend to raise starch and lower protein. Warmer, drier conditions shorten fill, so the protein share rises. Extra nitrogen fertilizer also pushes protein upward. Because end use differs, the ideal composition changes with it. For human food, paired barley or groats, large, uniform, often hull-less grains are preferred, with higher protein but minimal chaff. Barley flour lacks gluten, so bread volume is limited. It's better blended or used for porridges and specialty products. For feed, nutritionists want higher protein, good nitrogen-free extract, moderate fat, and lower fiber. Compared with maize, barley protein contains relatively more lysine and tryptophan, which is valuable in monogastric diets. For malting and beer, the target flips. Lower grain protein, roughly 9 to 11.5%, and high starch to maximize extract. Too much protein hurts lautering and can cause haze during storage, and it hardens the kernel, reducing friability. At the same time, protein should not fall below about 9% because yeast growth during fermentation still needs a basic nitrogen supply. Malting barleys, especially 2-row types, are selected for large kernels. 1,000 grain weight, around 40–48 grams. Thickens above 2.5 millimeters, uniform grading, and high germinative energy. Those physical traits translate into consistent water uptake, even modification in the malt house, and predictable extract in the brew house, where barley thrives, climate and soils. Barley has a remarkable ecological range, extending from high latitudes beyond the Arctic Circle to high altitudes in mountain regions and down to arid zones. That breadth explains why farmers use barley as a stabilizer in rotations where wheat struggles. Two-rowed malting barleys perform best in cooler, moister climates, which naturally hold grain protein down and extend the starch deposition window, key for brewing quality. Spring feed barleys exploit a short growing season to avoid summer drought, while autumn barleys are sown earlier and must harden properly to survive winter. Well-hardened stands tolerate quite low temperatures and a tillering node, especially under snow, but autumn barley remains more sensitive to winter kill than autumn wheat or rye. Rapid thaws or winter windows can be damaging if growth restarts too soon. Water needs are moderate, a transpiration coefficient roughly 300-400, but the critical phases run from stem elongation through heading when organ formation and spike fertility are decided. Because barley's root system is shallower than wheat's, early season drafts can bite harder, whereas late summer drafts are often avoided by earlier maturity. For soils, barley is actually more demanding than wheat. It performs best on medium textured, well-aerated loams, pH 6.5-7.5, with good fertility and no stagnant water. Carnosomes and good alluvials are classic barley soils. On acidic land, lime amendments are a prerequisite for stable yields. How we grow it well: rotation, fertilization, sowing, care, harvest. Rotation sets barley up to success. For autumn barley and autumn two-rowed barley, the best predecessors are legumes, annual or perennial, vetch, rapeseed, and flax, which leave clean fields, good structure, and available nitrogen. Spring two-rowed barley prefers predecessors that leave the soil weed-free and not overloaded with nitrate. Fertilized potatoes, sugar beet, or flax are common choices. Maize can precede it if residues are finally chopped and incorporated. Because barley vacates land early, farmers can establish double crops or cover crops soon after harvest. Nutrient management follows the crop's relatively short, intense uptake. To produce 1 ton of grain plus straw, barley removes roughly 24-29 kilograms nitrogen, 11 to 13 kilograms phosphate expressed as phosphorus pentoxide, and 21-28 kilograms potash expressed as potassium oxide. In practice, nitrogen is applied mainly in spring to avoid lodging and winter losses. Those depend on preceding crop and soil supply. Phosphorus goes under primary tillage. Potassium is added where tests are low and also improve standability. On acidic soils, 3 to 6 tons per hectare of lime every few years is recommended ahead of barley in the rotation. Seed quality matters. More than 98% purity and more than 90% germination, appropriate 1,000 grain weight and mandatory seed treatments against seed and soil-borne diseases like Fusarium and Ustilago. Sowing window. Autumn barley typically about 5 days earlier than wheat, from mid-September to early October, to ensure rooting and hardening. Spring, two-rowed barley should be sown as early as the field allows. Target densities: around 450 to 500 viable seeds per square meter for autumn barley, 450 to 550 square meters for autumn two-rowed and 450 to 500 square meter for spring two-rowed. Row spacing commonly 12.5 centimeters. Depth 3 to 5 centimeters in autumn types, 2 to 4 centimeters in spring times. Deeper sowing slows emergence and raises risk if crusting occurs. Crop care includes weed control with slightly lower herbicide doses than wheat. 2. Stage fungicide programs to keep the top two leaves green through grain filling, and insect control when thresholds are reached, for example with oat leaf beetle or aphids. Where moisture is limiting, 1 or 2 irrigations in spring at 300-500 cube meters per hectare help secure yield during stem elongation and heading. Harvest begins at full maturity with grain moisture below 16 to 17%. Mulled two-rowed barley is ideally cut at or under 15% to protect germination. Wetter grains must be dried quickly to 14% for safe storage. Autumn barley typically ripens between 7 and 10 days ahead of wheat and enters over ripeness rapidly, so delays cause heavy losses through ear breakage and shattering. In good Romanian conditions, autumn barley yields around 5 to 7 tons per hectare, while autumn and spring two-rowed barleys often deliver 4 to 6 tons per hectare depending on season and management. The grain to straw ratio is roughly 1 to 1.5. Industrial importance and current trends. Barley is far more than a field crop. It's an industrial cornerstone with deep history and very modern relevance. In human foods, pearl barley and groats are classic ingredients for soups, pilafs, and traditional dishes, sometimes serving as a rice substitute. Barley flour, although gluten-free and therefore not suited to high-volume bread, enriches specialty baked goods and porridges when blended. Through malting, barley becomes the backbone of beer. Germination and kilning develop enzymes, alpha and beta amylase, that convert starch to fermentable sugars, while the husk acts as a natural filter during lautering. Two-rowed malt barley is preferred for its larger, more uniform, lower protein kernels and high extract. Malted barley also underlies coffee substitutes, malt syrups, malted milks, and functional ingredients used to improve wheat flour performance. In animal nutrition, barley grain is a high-quality concentrate for pigs, poultry, young stocks, and dairy cows. Brand and brewers' co-products, like spent grains, close the loop by returning protein and energy to livestock systems. Barley straw is valuable in bedding and when treated as a fibrous feed. Across industrial bioprocessing, barley provides starch for ethanol, industrial alcohol, dextrins, and glucose used in adhesives, paper, textiles, and food technologies. Pharmaceutical and cosmetic lines use malt extracts and wheat germ-like fractions for syrups, tonics, skin, and hair care. Leveraging enzymes, B vitamins, and antioxidants. In bioenergy, both grain starch and biomass residues, straw and chaff, feed ethanol plants, biogas, pellets, and emerging thermochemical routes. And looking forward, barley fibers are being developed into biodegradable packaging and biocomposites, offering renewable alternatives to fossil plastics. As for trends and debates, three forces stand out. First, climate adaptation. Breeders are pushing frost-hardy, drought-tolerant, and disease-resistant barleys, both early and extra-early types, to stabilize yields under erratic winters and hotter springs. Barley's short cycle and lower water demand make it a candidate crop in drought-prone zones. Second, quality-driven markets. The rise of craft and specialty beer has tightened specifications for spring two-road malting lots, low protein, high 1,000 grain weight, uniformity, high germinative energy, and excellent friability, driving closer grower maltsters contracts and more precise agronomy. Third, sustainability and policy. Barley fits organic and low input systems thanks to competitive growth and modest fertilizer and pesticide needs, freeing land early and for cover crops. Policy discussions increasingly consider barley in eco-schemes and resilience planning, while the broader bioeconomy expands demand for functional fibers, beta-glucans, and renewable starch. The ongoing question of foods versus fuel remains, but integrated chains that valorize co-products, feed, energy, and materials help reconcile the two. In short, barley's value lies in its flexibility, a crop that feeds people, fuels breweries and bioenergy plants, supplies fibers and chemicals, and stabilizes rotations. With smart variety choice, balanced nutrition, and timely field operations, barley turns agronomy into reliable grain, premium malt, and a suite of industrial products that fit the sustainability agenda. Talk about sorghum, systematics, origin, cultivation areas, and varieties. Sorghum is one of the world's most important cereals, especially in arid and semi-arid regions, thanks to its outstanding adaptability to drought and high temperatures. It belongs to the grass family, Poaceae, Tribe, Anthropogone, and the genus Sorghum, which includes over 30 species. The main cultivated species is Sorghum bicolor, also known as Sorghum vulgare. Within this species, we distinguish several groups, depending on use. grain sorghum, which is the most widespread broom corn, sweet sorghum, and fodder sorghum. Each of these groups has a long history in specific regions. Grain sorghum is dominant in Africa, Asia, and Americas, with well-known land races such as Kafra in East Africa, Shalu in India, Kaoliang in northern China, and Dura or Milo in Central Africa. Broom corn, grown for its straight panicles, is used to make traditional brooms and brushes. Sweet sorghum is valued for its juicy, sugar-rich stalks used in syrups, fermented drinks, and increasingly in bioethanol production. Fodder sorghum, with its high green mass productivity, feeds animals as silage, hay, or pasture. The origin of sorghum has been debated, but most genetic evidence points to Ethiopia and East Africa as its primary center of domestication, with China as a secondary center. From there, sorghum spread across Asia, reached Europe in the 15th century, and was introduced to the Americas in the mid-19th century. A key milestone in sorghum's modern development was the discovery of male sterile lines, which enabled hybrid breeding. Today, hybrids dominate, offering yields up to 40% higher than traditional varieties, along with greater uniformity and improved resistance to drought and disease. In Romania, research at Fundulea created adapted varieties and hybrids such as Rosa, Carmen, Doina, Prut, and F135, designated to cope with our continental climate and recurring drought. We talk about chemical composition, agronomic traits, and hybrids. The sorghum grain is a concentrated source of energy and nutrients. On average, it contains 65 to 75% carbohydrates, mainly starch, 9 to 12% protein, 2 to 3% fat, 2 to 6% fiber, and around 2% ash with valuable minerals. The protein is low in lysine, which means it is often complemented with other protein sources, but the overall nutritional value makes it essential in food and feed systems of dry lands. Depending on grain color, sorghum also contains tannins and antioxidants which contribute to health benefits but can reduce digestibility if not managed through breeding. Agronomically, sorghum is known as the camel of the plant world because of its drought resistance. It has a deep and branched root system, waxy leaves, and the ability to reduce transpiration under stress. It thrives in high temperatures. Optimal germination occurs around 30 degrees Celsius and tolerates heat waves of nearly 40 degrees. Its water use efficiency is outstanding, with a transpiration coefficient nearly half that of maize. This explains why sorghum succeeds where other cereals fail. Modern hybrids like Pioneer 84G62, DeKalb DKS54, or SP 7715 combine high yields with stability, while Romanian hybrids like Prut or F351 HL add local adaptation and tolerance to common diseases such as fusarium, and anthracnose. Hybrids are also bred for specific end uses. High-starch grain types for milling and brewing, sweet types for syrup and ethanol, and leafy types for forage. Because of its resilience and productivity, sorghum is now recommended not only for marginal soils, but also for crop rotations aiming to restore soil fertility, reduce erosion, and make better use of limited water resources. Industrial uses and current trends. Sorghum is a highly versatile industrial crop. In the food industry, it is consumed in many forms. Across Africa and Asia, wholemeal sorghum flour is used for flatbreads, porridge, and fermented dishes, forming part of daily nutrition. More recently, sorghum has entered global markets as a gluten-free alternative to wheat. Bakeries and food companies use it to make bread, pastries, and other specialty products for people with celiac disease or gluten intolerance. With its high fiber content, natural antioxidants, and slow release starches, sorghum is also increasingly incorporated into functional foods and dietary supplements aimed at supporting digestive health and lowering blood sugar levels. The beverage sector relies heavily on sorghum as well. In China, it remains the foundation of baijiu, one of the most widely consumed spirits in the world. In Africa, traditional beers and artisanal fermented drinks are based on sorghum. In Europe and North America, sorghum has found a new role in the production of gluten-free beers and specialty craft beverages. Sweet sorghum stalks provide a juice rich in sugars, which is processed into syrups, soft drinks, and liquors, combining traditional practices with modern product lines. Sorghum also plays a growing role in the bioenergy industry. Its sugar-rich stalks can be pressed to produce bioethanol, while the leftover biomass stalks, leaves, and chaff can be converted into biogas or pellets. Because it uses water so efficiently and grows well on marginal soils, sorghum is increasingly seen as a renewable raw material for the green energy transition. In industry and craft, sorghum has unique applications. Broom corn types produce long, flexible panicles that are still used for brooms, brushes, and woven household items. Starch extracted from sorghum grains is used in the paper, textile, and adhesive industries, while natural pigments obtained from leaves and husks are regaining popularity as sustainable textile dyes. More recently, research has shown that sorghum, straw, and fibers can be transformed into bioplastics, composites, and insulation materials for construction, positioning it as a crop with real potential for the bioeconomy. Looking at the future, sorghum is being rediscovered as a strategic crop. Climate change, with its hotter summers and more frequent droughts, makes sorghum an excellent candidate for establishing yields in vulnerable regions. At the same time, the growing demand for gluten-free foods ensures a strong market in the food industry. Beyond food, sorghum is moving to the center of discussions about renewable raw materials, from bioethanol and biogas to biodegradable plastics and eco-friendly construction panels. Finally, the use of digital agriculture, satellites, drones, and soil sensors offers farmers new tools to manage sorghum efficiently and profitably. In this way, sorghum is not just an ancient cereal but a modern solution for food security, industrial innovation, and sustainability. Its resilience and adaptability confirm its role as one of the crops of the future. Cereals are both the backbone of global agriculture and a platform for modern industry. In this unit, we saw how three crops, wheat, barley, and sorghum, combine food security with industrial versatility. Wheat, Triticum aestivum, remains the primary cereal for human diets. Starch and roughly 60 to 75% and proteins around 10 to 16% plus gluten make it indispensable for milling, bread, pasta, biscuits, and pastries. Beyond food, wheat's byproducts power functional foods and supplements, while starch feeds paper, textiles, adhesives, and emerging bioplastics. Straw moves into eco-construction and bioenergy. Barley, Hordeum vulgare, connects food, brewing, and feed. Two raw malting barley with moderate protein, high starch, and uniform kernels is the base for beer, whiskey, and fermented beverages. As pearled grain and flakes, it enters health foods via beta-glucans with cardiovascular benefits. In feed, barley and its co-products, bran, germ, and brewery residues, close nutrient loops, and barley is now explored for advanced fermentation and biodegradable materials. Sorghum biocolor, stands out for climate resilience and bioeconomy potential. It supplies gluten-free flours and fermented foods, while sweet sorghum stalks yield syrup and bioethanol, residues fuel biogas, and pellets. Technical sorghum provides fibers for brooms, woven goods, and is being developed for bioplastics, packaging, insulation, and composites. Taken together, wheat, barley, and sorghum are not just cereals. They are strategic industrial resources underpinning food systems, brewing, biotechnology, bioenergy, sustainable materials, and the circular economy. Key levers for a more resilient and climate-ready agriculture.